Hello again and welcome to another review for historical fencing gear. Today I'm gonna be looking at these type of gloves. These are the 5-fingered Red Dragon gloves. I will be sharing with you why I don't really like them, but I'm still using them almost every day. I have been using the Red Dragon for the past 3 years. They have become my default for one-handed swords and for some exercises. But this is not how they look in this time. This is how they look. These are very popular type of gloves. I've seen them in all the European events I've been and in many videos both here and from the US. They're especially used in side sword and arming sword and sword and buckler, and I've even seen some rapier usage. Their price is decent, around 70 to 80 euro, depending on where you take them from and how much you pay for shipment. We used to order these gloves from the UK, but now with Brexit this is not really a viable option. They do have only 2 sizes, which is not ideal, but they manage to fit almost everyone. The Red Dragon gloves are made in China, but are sold everywhere, at least as far as I know. There has never been a time that I wasn't able to order them, they were always available. Now I'll go through some of their features, how they move, how they feel, and how much they protect you. So the Red Dragon glove is 5-finger glove, which gives it more mobility than most other gloves, because you can obviously move each finger individually. They weigh as much as the SGs, sparring gloves, but they're definitely less protective. However, because of the 5 fingers, they are more maneuverable. The back part of the glove is the most defended part. I can say that here you can take pretty solid blows, you won't really feel a problem. You can actually see part of the plate here and how it starts showing up, but still it does protect from most hits that you receive here. The knuckle protection is pretty decent. It fits really well with my hand, but if you're with the wrong size, your knuckles will end up here and you actually have more issues and bigger chance to actually receive bad hits. And how is the protection level on the fingers? Well, as they're 5-finger gloves, they're obviously less protective than if you have a whole shell around all your 4 fingers or 2x2. But you do have the added mobility, so you can move individually each finger. The thumb protection is basically only from the top. There is nothing in front and there is nothing on the sides. The only protection that you have on the sides is that the finger is pretty big, so it actually a blow will cut to the side. The top protection on the other fingers is pretty much the same. Plates on top of each other. Nothing on the tip and nothing really on the sides of the fingers. Although you do have some protection here and here, where you can expect more blows. But it's nothing really too much and it's also pretty soft, so most blows do come through. The wrist protection is pretty decent. You have 3 plates here protecting the top and the side of your hand, and you also have this plate protecting the gap between the back of the hand and the wrist protector. I have actually removed this part of these gloves on my left hand. So, what about gaps in the protection? Most of the gaps are between the plates as they're not overlapping at most places here on the back of the hand. This is usually not a big issue as they're in the right direction, so a hit here is not very probable. At the fingers, where there are more hits and when you don't know where a hit will come from, there is overlapping protection here, which is sewn over. It will generally work and protect your hand. Main concern and biggest protection issue is on the inside of the hand. The inside of the glove offers no penetration protection. There is also this big gap here, which you can't really close no matter what you want to do, but with a jacket there it's usually mostly closed. In my older gloves that are currently falling apart, there is a big hole here, and I don't know if this material here is actually puncture proof, but I wouldn't count on it. So the biggest benefit as far as feature goes, it's a 5-finger glove, you can move it individually each finger, there is decent protection at the back of the hand, and at the wrist there is semi-decent protection at the top of the fingers, but there is no protection at the front, at your tips, and at the inside of the glove. So any heat that comes somewhere over here is an issue. So how do most people use Red Dragon gloves? I've seen most people use them with side sword, with arming sword, with sword and buckler. Some of them used it with rapier. I think it's a bit of an overkill with rapier, and this kind of PBT gloves or something similar is better actually for rapier, because it has better thrust protection and most of the cuts are stopped from the rapier's complex hilts. As far as side sword goes, there are a bunch of different types of side swords, but most of them have knucklebows, and this type of glove is good in this situation. Most side swords that I've seen, in Europe at least, are lighter. With the added protection of the proto-complex hilt or the complex hilt of a side sword, it's usually enough. Not a lot of people are using arming swords anyway, and arming sword and buckler, but those who are can actually use this glove most of the time. So how do I use these gloves? I'm gonna break this in two parts: drill work and free play. For most of our drill work we still use the PBT gloves, but if you're not so confident, if you're afraid that you can get hit, these are pretty much enough. When you're drilling with a partner, you can use these gloves no matter the weapon. I use them for side sword, for long sword, for arming sword, for sword and buckler. You can do any kind of predetermined exercise with these gloves, and even if it's expected to have a hit on the fingers, when you're doing it with someone that you trust and in a controlled manner, it's fine. When it comes to free play though, it's different. I usually go for these gloves when we go for geared one-handed sparring. Side sword, Dragon arming swords, sword and buckler as well, because the buckler protects your hand pretty well anyway. However, if you do tend to get hit on your fingers, they might not be the good choice even in one-handed weapons. For side sword, it is less of an issue because your proto-complex hilt or complex hilt protects most of your fingers. But if you tend to keep your finger on the guard, you will have problems. And when you go to one-handed arming sword or sword and buckler, again you need to protect your fingers a bit more. I actually did suffer an injury in these gloves, as my colleague Bobo managed to break my thumb through it. There is no outside damage on the glove, but my thumb was broken. This was the time when we were playing with Black Fencer Scout and Type 14 swords, and a downward cut from his side actually cut me on all my fingers and broke my thumb. And if you've seen the video from the demonstration with historical clothing, I was actually doing it with a broken thumb, without knowing it. Now, how about longsword? Don't use them for longsword, other than drills. Pretty much every competition that I've seen is forbidden for use with longsword. And it's a good reason for it, they are not enough for this. Still, they can be used for free play for longsword with certain conditions. For example, you can use them with someone that you really trust, and you have agreed not to make solid hits on the hands. I've also used only the left hand glove, while remaining with the right hand sparring glove, so this way I have a bit more mobility without the added issue. All those situations that I talked about are with steel weapons. If you're playing with wooden wasters or synthetics, most of those rules still apply. You won't have issues with puncture penetration and with the gaps here, but still they hit relatively hard, so you need to have this in mind. For those of you fencing with sabers and broadsword, I can't really give you a direct opinion because these are not the weapons that I'm training with, but Matt Easton had a good video and I'll link it down in the description. Long story short, they work and they're enough as long as you can fit them in the guard. So now let's talk about their quality, maintenance and long-term viability. You can clearly see that these gloves will be nearing their end, especially the right one, because I'm right-handed. The left one can still have some time left, but I'll most probably be changing it anyway. The quality of these gloves is nothing to be admired at. They still hold on for some time, but they do start breaking apart. They're relatively easy to maintain or alter. You can stitch them up when they start falling apart, you can glue them, you can put duct tape on them. So basically you can hold them together a bit longer. You don't need any special materials, equipment to keep them together for a longer period of time. And when it comes to washing, you can wash them pretty easily. There are no metal parts or stuff that you need to pull out and put back in, so they're easily maintained. Now I'll share you my opinion about which equipment goes well with them and which doesn't. A big benefit of the wrist design is that you can fit basically every type of equipment. I'm usually playing with Space AP light jacket and light forearm protection, and they fit perfectly. We have also Space AP jackets and Space Hussar jackets, and they fit there as well, no problem, even if you put some other forearm protection there. They can get a bit bulky with Space AP jacket and a thick forearm protection, but you can still move relatively easy with it. The inside gap here and the ability to close your hand is actually a benefit in this case. So why did I mention that I use them almost every day? It's because there are not really any good alternatives to this. I use the PBT Lite for drilling. I recommend the Space Heavies and the sparring gloves for heavy longsword play and for arming swords sometimes. There are several 5-finger gloves models that are on their way that are in production, but most of them are much more expensive. The 5-finger alternatives that are currently on the market and basically fulfill this role are the Space Specials that I don't really like for many reasons. And some people still use lacrosse gloves, which, if you can see, are obviously the inspiration for the Red Dragon gloves. The Infinity gloves from Sparring Gloves also look well, but they have a long waiting time and I haven't seen them live, so I can't really comment on them. And hopefully by the end of the year I'll have my Pro Gauntlets finally, so I'll have a good alternative to this. They have a relatively short break-in period. You can use them at their maximum mobility within several weeks of intense usage. This is an additional reason why you should use them for drilling, to get them to fit you better, to get used to them, and to prepare them for free play afterwards. And now finally, who would I recommend them for? Basically everyone who is doing any kind of one-handed weapon could benefit from them. If not really for free play, at least for drilling with them. And if you're fencing with complex hilted weapons, they might be the only option that has any kind of strong protection here on the fingers. And even for longsword fencers, you can use them to get better mechanics during your drilling or light free play, but just don't go to heavy free play with them. If you have different experience with the Red Dragon gloves, do let me know down in the comments. I will be posting more reviews about historical fencing gear. And if you enjoyed this one, do give me a like and subscribe, or you can watch another one of my videos.